Barry DePaul with Unlabeled Leadership. Welcome to episode 91. Barry O'Reilly reframes entrepreneurialism and negative results. Here's a shout out to listeners in Bavaria, Germany, Berlin, Germany, Sardinia, Italy, and in the United States, Everett, Washington, and Rapid City, South Dakota. With that, let's get started. Here's a riddle. What do you find when you connect business model innovation, product development, organizational design, and cultural transformation? The answer? Barry O'Reilly, of course. Barry is a business advisor, entrepreneur, the author of 2 incredible books, a writer for The Economist. He's on the faculty for Singularity University. Barry is also the co-founder and chief incubation officer at a company called Nobody Studios. They have a word on their website called Toki. I'm not sure if that's how it's pronounced, but it stands for the unwavering determination to achieve what no one else believes possible. Toki is a wonderful way of describing the entrepreneurial spirit. Part 1. The Entrepreneurial Myth. Leadership is about helping people mature mentally and morally. In other words, helping them build character. Leadership can affect a whole organization or an individual. It can result in subtle changes or even massive changes. Sharing an idea with someone could have no effect or a monumental change with how someone perceives themselves or their situation. In this story, Barry shares something someone said that changed his perspective of his business and what he was trying to accomplish. Here's Barry to explain.
One of the bits of advice that actually one of my cousins gave to me, his name was Philip, I was an entrepreneur. He always said that you don't actually have one shot, you actually have many. It was really interesting for me when he shared that with me because at the time I had just tried to start my sort of first company, or I'd sort of quit my job. I was working in a well-known sort of consultancy and had tried to break out on my own to launch an independent business for myself again. And it didn't work out. It was a really tough experience, actually. I was really sort of down and fed up about it. I had felt like built it up in my mind that this was going to be the thing that was going to work for me. This thing that was going to totally change the trajectory of what I was doing. And it didn't work out. You know, one of the things he sort of said to me then is this notion that we always think we just have one shot at something, or it's a sort of pass or fail. But it was a great moment for me to understand that actually entrepreneurialism is a daily journey. You know, sometimes you're ahead, sometimes you're behind, or some days it works out and some days it doesn't. And really the sort of key is to sort of dust yourself down. When it doesn't work out, you know, sift through the lessons and use them for the next spin. You know, it was just a great bit of advice and thing that I needed to hear at that time when he would sort of say to me is that the mistake is people think they only have one shot at that meeting, that introduction, at that pitch. And if it doesn't pay off, you know, it's over. But it's not the case. You actually have many shots. And really, it's all about just taking the lessons you learn from the shots you take and then feeding them forward to the next shot and the one after that and the one after that. And I think it was just one of those things that for me, early days in my entrepreneurial career, I had this notion of a pass or a fail. It worked or it didn't. I was a success or a failure. And really, actually, nothing could be further from the truth.
Being an entrepreneur is, well, you pretty much captured it. What it's like on that journey. And that is one of the misnomers about being an entrepreneur is that you would write a book. It would sell. You'd be doing great. But no one sees all the effort, all the mistakes, all the letdowns that happen. They don't see the work that goes behind it. Will Ferrell once described in an article that when he was a comedian and he was trying to make it, he said it was like throwing darts at a dartboard, trying different things and learning as you go. And he hit a bullseye when he was on Saturday Night Live. Something that people don't realize is that you have to keep going at it. And if it doesn't work out, just like you were saying, well, then it's not over. Your career's not over. You just have to move on.
Yeah, and it's a learning process. Like that's what any business model is. That's whatever new venture is, any new company is. Often what you think it's going to be in the beginning is not actually what it turns out to be in the end. The whole process of taking those sort of steps into the unknown and testing your ideas, testing your hypotheses to see what works and what doesn't, and then learning from what information comes back. Sometimes you tee it up as information that's positive and says that you're doing the right things to keep doing them. And then sometimes the information is negative, which is say, this isn't the right thing, stop doing that. And all of it is about course correction and adapting to the information that you're gathering from the things that you're trying. And we see this a lot in our venture studio, Nobody Studios. We're trying to launch 100 companies over the next 5 years. That means we're probably going to have to test 10,000 ideas to find out which ones work and which ones don't, and bring teams together to find out which ones gel and which ones don't. The summation of all those experiments, those tests, those things that we try, that will be what results in 100 compelling companies at the end. I imagine a lot of those companies aren't going to look exactly like we envisaged them when we had them on a Post-it note and started working on it. They'll be different because we'll have learned our way through the process. And I think that's probably one of the most compelling things I find about entrepreneurialism is it's not necessarily so much to pass and fail. It's just, can you have the grit, discipline, and determination to keep taking steps, keep moving forward and learning from the hard knocks and accelerating from the positive things you hear. And I think that's been a great mindset for me that's helped me, not necessarily fear uncertainty or trying new things. When you frame it as a way that you're going to learn something, it might be what you want to hear or it might not be what you want to hear, but that's part of the journey. And if you can listen for it, I think you can iterate and build faster and build even better companies as well.
About 4 or 5 years ago, I started hearing from clients about this idea that they want their employees to have an entrepreneurial mindset and develop that spirit. They call it the entrepreneurial spirit. What you just described, do you think that's potentially what they may have been thinking, or could it potentially be something else?
Yeah, I think everybody wants the entrepreneurial spirit. What I think about when I hear executives say that, and I work with some of the largest companies in the world, lots of Fortune 500 executives or disruptive sort of startups here in San Francisco where I live, is that what really people mean by entrepreneurialism is they want people to sort of own problems and try and solve them, try things to see what works and what doesn't. One of my favorite quotes actually is from Stuart Butterfield, who's the CEO of a company called Slack. And they were asking him, what would be the number one thing that you'd look for in someone in your team? And he didn't say how smart they were or what school they went to, or what he said was, I want people to try things. I want them to figure out what their best idea is and give it a try. And if it doesn't work, I want to know what their next best idea is and give it a try. And if they just keep up that sort of behavior, eventually we're going to get the breakthroughs that we want to build the kind of company and product that we want. For him, that was his version of the entrepreneurial spirit. I think that's what people are trying to capture, is that can you just get people to keep bringing their best thinking, their best ideas and trying it. And if it doesn't work, don't get trapped to say that it's a failed or you failed or you're going to get fired. Recognize what you learned from it and then get your next best idea and give it a shot. And I think this is one of the cultures that actually we're really trying to cultivate in the founders and the teams that are in our studio, is encouraging them to keep trying things. As long as you keep trying, you're going to get a move in the direction that you want. And sure, sometimes you might try and not be getting a signal or feedback or failures, but that's just a sign to say, maybe this isn't the right idea. So let's kill the idea and figure out what our next best idea is and start working on that. And that's the magic of actually creating and innovating or building things that people really love. It's actually finding or following the sort of winks from the universe or your customers who tell you you're going in the right direction. Do more of this. You're going in the wrong direction. Do less of that. And I think that's what I think great entrepreneurial spirit is just having good ideas, putting your best thinking at it and, trying things. You'll figure it out. And I think that's one of the more things that we're constantly trying to cultivate in leaders and founders and studios, because even in most companies, whether you're an enterprise or a startup, people fear failure. They fear of getting negative feedback or being told that it was wrong or how they might be treated if it doesn't work out. So therefore, they sort of play it safe or they stagnate, or worst case, they don't do anything. So you're sort of stuck in this stasis. And I think that's probably one of the things when people in big companies, especially say entrepreneurialism, is they're trying to look for encouraging people to try things because they feel like people are just stuck doing the same old things, the way things have always been done. And I think that's what I probably observed the most is that stasis, especially in today's world with the pace of innovation and the rate of change. If you're not constantly evolving, you're not necessarily stationary, you're going backwards.
Part 2. Reframing the challenge. On these podcasts, you'll hear stories about how people have led other people and organizations through difficult challenges. There's a concept you really don't hear much about, and that is self-leadership. I think what Barry shares with us is a good example of self-leadership. Again, here's Barry.
I think there's something to be said about leadership in general, about making yourself vulnerable and sharing your own stories to help inspire people. One of the classic situations I was in was trying to write a book. I had this big aspiration that I wanted to write a best-selling book. I thought writers would sit down at their desk, in a purple velvet jacket with a red wine and just start writing furiously like Hemingway or Enid Blyton or whoever might inspire you. And as much as I tried to do all of that, it never worked for me. I'd sit there, I'd be frustrated, like I'm dyslexic, I have a solid history of D+ in English literature. I was stuck. So I just thought I was a failure as a writer, that I would never be able to do that. I sort of got thinking about how could I reframe this? How could I actually reflect back on what I'm actually trying to do here? When I thought about it and thought about in the future, really what I was trying to do was to create content. Wasn't necessarily trying to write something. And when I reframed actually the outcome I was aiming for as trying to create content, it got me thinking that there's many ways to create content. Typing is just one way. Speaking is another. Doing videos, recording, transcribing things. And this actually sort of gave me a whole other way to start reframing about how I could create content. And for someone like me, actually talking is one of the ways I like to create content. So I realized actually maybe a better way would be that I could get someone to interview me, or I could talk through my ideas, make bullet points and talk about them and transcribe it. So I started working with an editor or journalist who would interview me, and they'd ask me questions about topics or chapters that I wanted to write, and I'd tell stories. We would transcribe it all in real time. So in an hour, I'd create 15,000 words from just chatting with this person. They would sort of take it and edit it and put it into shape and do their work on it and send it back to me almost like a minimum viable chapter, a prototype that I could feed back on. And I'd start to iterate it and improve it. And instantly I got this breakthrough in terms of my ability to create content and turn it into a book. And I think that was one of the most powerful sort of lessons for me about learning, or more importantly, unlearning things that I believed you had to do to be successful at a certain path, is that there's many ways to be successful. And the trick is actually to find out what works for you. For me, to write a book didn't mean sitting down in my purple velvet jacket and typing. It meant that I just needed to tell my stories and have someone help me capture them and edit them and synthesize them and put them in a written format. And I failed with that. So I wanted to share that with the world to inspire more people of what's possible. Because I think writing a book is something many people hold the ambition for, but they're often stuck at the keyboard trying to struggle how to write 30 words or 400 words a day. And I would say to you, maybe that typing's not the way to create it. But I, like to share that with people as some of the failures I experienced, but how they helped me learn and move forward to create something that I'm really proud of. Now written 2 best-selling books, and that's all been written through words, through speaking.
That's fantastic. One thing that I'm hearing in what you're describing in a sense is self-leadership, where you're actually leading yourself, you're reframing something to make it so that it can work for you, and you've learned from that. And there seems to be a strong correlation or connection between leadership and learning. I think you just illustrated a little bit about that connection.
Yeah, and I think don't be afraid to share what you're learning. The mistakes, the aha moments you had. This is one of the problems probably with leadership, is that people think that leaders don't make mistakes, or they can't tell people about mistakes or problems that they've had or things that they tried that didn't work, because it reflects that they don't know. What I find is that people respond most to leaders who share their real journey, their authentic journey, their vulnerable journey about what worked, what didn't, how did they evolve, what lessons did they take from it, what would they do differently. That humanizes you to other people, which actually makes them want to work with you even more. And I think that's something to think about.
It's a great lesson for people in management. When someone starts out new in a role like a supervisor position, they think they have to have the ideas, and in general, if they haven't learned about what it means to manage people, that's something that comes up. But to your point, if you're authentic and you just say, let them know, hey, I'm new at this. I've never done this before. I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to let you know if I don't have the answers or if I don't have ideas on this. I really want to hear from you and let you guys really take charge and empower you to be able to make a difference.
Right on.
Part 3, building your leadership style. You may have heard of a fashion style, but what the heck is a leadership style? Think of style as a set of repeatable behaviors related to something. So, leadership style is a set of behaviors that relate to how you practice leadership. Barry advises us on how we can develop our leadership style. Here's Barry.
If you're trying to develop your style of leadership, the best thing you can do is just be yourself. Not try to be someone who you think you need to be or who you believe or copy a manager or some style that you think is going to be successful in the company that you're in, because that all takes energy. It takes energy away from you actually focusing on the work that you want to do because you're trying to put energy into being something you're not. For myself, and this is something that has come really over time, is that I've actually got more and more comfortable with just being myself. It's easy to be me. It's easy to lead in my style that is natural to me. And when I get feedback that says that doesn't work or it's odd or it doesn't help people, I listen to it and then think about, well, do I need to evolve myself to be better or not? That's one of the things I would encourage people to be, is just be your authentic self as a leader. Don't try to be somebody else or what you think people want you to be. Just be yourself, because it takes so much energy to lead already. Your ability to sort of put more energy into trying to be a character that you're creating on top of the sort of message that you're trying to deliver just adds more and more energy that you need. Often people start to see that you're not being authentic. Trust in yourself. Trust in your own abilities, that you are capable, that your stories that matter, that your insights will help. And I think you could be way more successful than you realized.
When you say be yourself, you make a really crucial caveat to that. Yes, be yourself, go ahead and grow, learn, evolve, learn from your mistakes, listen to feedback, and try to grow from that. But at the same time, you internalize what people are saying and make it part of who you are. And that's part of your evolution as someone as a professional and as a human being.
Right on.
Thanks to Barry O'Reilly. If you'd like to learn more about Barry, go to the show notes. And if you have a question or comment, go to unlabelleadership.com, click the message icon, and you can leave a voicemail message for up to 1 minute. I'd like to thank those who donate to the show. Your contributions make a difference because this is an all-volunteer service. Mostly, I'd like to thank you for listening. Until next time, lead on.